All right. Well, let's get going. I don't want to delay anybody too much longer, but welcome to the webinar today. Today, we're going to talk about 5 things your Dynamics 365 Business Central developers hate and how to help them. So this morning, I am Mark Anderson. I am your presenter today. Kind of give you a little bit of a background on myself. I am the Director of Professional Services here at E1 Solutions, which is just a really fancy title that says I run the consulting team and I want to just make sure everybody's moving forward, keeping the work together. But my entire background is in the development life cycle. Right. So I was a developer for 20 years. I actually ran a development team for almost 10 years. And then I realized I really wanted to be working directly with the customer. So kind of moved into the consulting role. So I've kind of been through a lot of that sort of process. I've been in this industry, as you can add up those numbers, for almost 40 years of doing this process, as the gray hair shows in my photo. So we can kind of go from there. But realistically, we could have almost named this title just 5 things your developers hate and how to help them. And as a developer, here were the 5 things that I really hated. Do you have a minute? Hey, can you just give me a call? I just need an update. What's the status of this bug? We need to have a meeting to discuss, dot, dot, dot. And that meeting really could have been an email. That meeting really could have been, give them they're just looking for some information, right? And every time that happens, you get interrupted. And so that's really truly a lot of where it comes from. Like I said, I was a developer for, 20 plus years. So today we're really going to kind of talk about the development life cycle, right? How do we figure out what that life cycle should be? How we can help you out with some of those sort of processes? How do you keep developers focused, right? Really on what's important, because we all get pulled 1,000 different directions throughout the day. How do we keep that focus intact, right? And really, what do you keep it focus on what's important along with that? And then what tools does the E1 team kind of have to kind of help you down that path? So let's talk a little bit about the overall just development lifecycle models that can exist out in this world, right? We have what we call the waterfall. That's the original sort of development lifecycle that I started with. I had a project that was a 10-month project. It was a 300-page design document of what this feature and functionality needed to be. And it started at the beginning, and you just kept working your way through that design document until you were done. Right? So it was very linear, it's very sequential, it was very structured, it was easy to manage because you knew exactly where, right? I'm on page 30 of 300. But it was rigid. It was hard to adapt to changes like, oh, we forgot about, and oh, we need to do. Um, and so you end up having to take that 300-page document, and it was always being modified because it was so large, it became very cumbersome. So as we kind of evolved and moved through that process, we moved into what we called a little more agile, right? Which really describes what it is. It's iterative, it's incremental, it's flexible. It gives you that ability to truly kind of go through and find that information and change it on the fly, right? But it requires that collaboration. Right. So an example, right? I'm creating a sales order system, right? I'm creating a web page, website to sell items, right? Well, what do I need to be able to do that, right? I really need customers. I really need items. What is up front before that? And in that agile, I can start working on these customer process, right? Well, if I'm working with customers and items, well, maybe I need to have special pricing in between, right? I've got the customer that's my wholesale customer. I got my customer that's a retail customer. I got my favorite customers, and I want to be able to give them a discount, those sort of things. Well, if that wasn't thought about up front in that waterfall methodology, right? Now all of a sudden we have to stop and we have to go back to that waterfall and go, oh, well, we have to add a price level in here somewhere. Where does that fit? How does it go? But with that agile, you can kind of go through and move. From that agile, then we kind of moved into what we called the scrum, right? Where it really becomes that agile framework, but we divide it into 2 to 4 week sprints is what we called them. okay? And in that sprint, I focused just on this. And we had stand-up meetings. And we called them a stand-up meeting because if you sat down in a meeting, the meetings tended to go longer. So what we would do is we would do what we call the stand-up meeting, even though we're doing them on Teams today. It's just very much a, what am I working on? What am I working on next? What am I stuck on? But you didn't fix the stuck in that meeting. You had another meeting, right? So instead of the 25 people that were on this project, you had the two people that needed to talk to get through the what are we stuck on moment. And so it required the experienced team, but it required good communication. But the key was it wasn't the overall process to do that. Now, I had a developer, like I told you, I ran a development team for about 10 years as well. I had a developer where that waterfall methodology just did not work for that person. I could not give them a 300-page design doc and go, here's your project, get it done in 10 months. They didn't have that ability or the experience to understand that how long it takes to do some different things to be able to stay focused for that 10 months and do it. But in that agile world where I kind of gave them that, this is what you're working on in the next 2 weeks, or this is a little bit bigger, this is what you're working on the next 4 weeks. It really kept that focus within there. And that helped everybody in the team truly be able to become that developer, to be able to grow, to figure out what it is that they needed to do. Now in the world, when we're really dealing with more of that SaaS, the software as a service methodology and that mindset, we really kind of switched into what we call the DevOps, right? Where it combines that development team with the IT team to be able to continuously integrate and deliver, right? It gives me the ability to be able to put a patch out on the website and all 15,000 of my customers get that. In the old methodology, in the old, on-prem sort of the world, is you had to release the entire piece of software, which meant it had to go through that true life cycle of understanding of the development and the testing and the et cetera that had to go through. So we've really kind of come a very long way in that development life cycle just since I started. And even in the last few years, that has really changed. So when we talk about development, it really becomes important to have 3 buckets of that life cycle, right? You've got your new functionality. What are your customer needs? What are the industry needs? What are the competitors doing better than we're doing, right? You have to focus on that because that's where you get your net new sales, right? That's where you get your new customers like, oh, this software does this thing better. I need that, right? You also have a bucket in the middle I call the internal needs, right? The sales team going, if I had this feature, we'd be able to sell more, right? The support team that says, if I had the ability to look at a log file, right? Give me the ability to do a log file. We can have that sort of an internal need, right? And then the services team, right? The consultants that are out there, they're the ones using it on a daily basis, right? We're requesting this. And one example that I've got here is within the Smart Connect tool, and I'm working on it within the PopTalk tool as well, is I create these integrations within the Smart Connect tool. I want to be able to document that. Well, every particular project that I did, I'd have to go in and do screenshots of what the mappings were and what the definitions were and what the calculated fields were. So I went to my team and said, give me the ability to actually just run this and create the documentation for me. And that saves 2 to 4 hours every single project by just being able to click a button, right? You have these internal needs that are also important in that bucket. The last bucket is bug fixes, right? It's broken, it's slow, it's the annoying things. As a developer, I would sit down with my customers and go, what's annoying, right? What drives you crazy within the software on a daily basis? Because realistically, these don't need to be 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 in a release. Sometimes it could be 60% new functionality, 30% bug fixes, and 10% internal. Or some release where it's 60% bugs because it was just, those are the things that really need to do. Customers leave your software because of bug fixes. They come to your software because of the new functionality, and your employees leave when they feel frustrated that they don't have a voice in that software. So the combination of all three of these buckets become very, very important. And so you need to sort of be able to be flexible depending on what that process is. How does that need to go through? How do we get new customers? How do we keep our customers? Because the ones that you keep are better than the new sales because they're going to continue out there. You get rid of the annoying things, they're going to sing your praises. Now, from the developer, right? How do you limit these interruptions? How do you communicate the current status, right? How do you avoid status calls and taking notes manually? How do you write the release notes, right? How do you communicate to the end user when that bug is fixed, right? All of those things that we're looking at, how can we help you solve those situations? So, challenges within the traditional communication, right? I'm working on a process, I'm working on a feature, I'm working on functionality, I'm working on bug fixes. That support person, that salesperson, somebody's got to come to me as the developer and go, what's the status? So I have to stop what I'm doing, figure out what they're asking, go back to them, tell them this is the update, it's going to be another week, whatever that process is. And then I have to come back to my code and go, all right, what was I working on? Where was I at? And that causes that process to go out longer. And it actually causes more bugs because you forget where you're at and you think you're 3 steps further and you miss 2 or 3 steps in between. Meetings, same thing, right? I have these meetings, which is those stand-up meetings, were a 10-minute meeting. I limited the meeting lengths, right? I want to reduce the time away. Don't want them to stop to go do a status call, right? I don't want them to be able to go through, and you have that same problem coming back, right? So you really are coming back and you're losing time because you're being interrupted all of the time. You're coming back, causing that miss, right? And really does give you more bugs in your software typically. So the right way to communicate, okay? You ultimately have options, right? My users, I can give them access to the project software, right? So our project team, for my team, we're using teamwork.com and it tracks all of the tasks that I'm doing. They can see the due dates on them. They can come in and do that. We can do the same thing with our bug tracking system. But that forces the users who live in one system, right? Our salespeople live in a quote unquote CRM, whatever their quote unquote CRM is, Salesforce, Dynamic CRM, customer engagement, whatever they've branded it at today. That's where they live. Well, now they have to go learn another piece of software. They have to go figure out how to get around and get to that information. Then you've got maintenance, you've got licensing, right? You've got all of those other considerations that you need to understand. How is all of this going to work? Or you just generate a report. Here's the current status, right? I can create a report that shows all of the due dates. I can show the reports of the bugs that are fixed. But as soon as it's created, it's out of date, right? I can publish this out on our SharePoint site, but as soon as I create that in that report, it's out of date because I've solved another bug. I fixed another feature, right? I've got all of this particular information. So it's out of date. So really what we want to do is you have options with options 3 or 4, right? I can integrate the project software and the bug tracking system so that I can actually store the information from my project software or my bug tracking software in the quote unquote CRM, right? You can see my quotes around there because I just use that as my customer relationships, right? Whatever version you're using, everybody has a different tool. I don't care what that is, right? Same thing for the quote unquote help desk. What help desk software are you using? Because support needs to see what the status of the bug is. The salespeople need to see. And so I can do an integration, right? That's that Smart Connect tool that I kind of mentioned. That's our integration software that says I can push this information to there, but now I'm storing it in 2 different places. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it's overkill. The other option here is what we call embed the project or bug information into the system the users live in. Actually embed that process right where they live. So talking about these again, just to kind of break these down a little bit, right? Within Smart Connect, it's an integration tool. So we can send the project updates to that. We can send the bug updates to that. The status meeting notes, Okay, this is something that we've done internally, is every time we have our status calls or we have calls with our customers, we have an automated note taker that tracks the notes for us. So what I've done with Smart Connect is I've pulled the notes from that note tracking system, which is all of the integrate, all of the, this is my to-do list. These were the questions that popped up as a reminder. And what I've done with Smart Connect is I've taken those meeting notes and I've embedded them in teamwork.com. I've taken those meeting notes and I've put them into CRM. That way, the salespeople who are sitting in CRM can go in and look at, oh, hey, this is the last meeting. The last meeting was yesterday. We're waiting on Bob from IT to give Mark access to your system. They don't have to call Mark to go, what are you waiting, what's going on, what's the status? It sits right there. So you have those meeting notes. It actually has the recording of that, a link to the recording of that meeting, so we can actually go back and review it if needed. And we've done that through the Smart Connect integration tool. And now I've got that information sitting where it needs to be. PopDoc is a tool we call with a virtual integration. I just need to show the data where the users spend their time, right? It also gives you the ability to build queries for Business Central quickly and accurately. Gives you kind of a query building tool. So within PopDoc, now I just take the information, right, from our bug tracking system, and I display it within a widget within the system. And it gives you that concept of being able to go, I only want to show that information, right? So this is our PopDoc tool, okay? So this is our tool, right? So this is Salesforce, can be any system that you live in, right? We're sitting under the account Giordano's. These are the current bugs that we've got for that particular customer that is open. So my salespeople can sit here and actually see the bugs that are listed. They can see that this one is in progress. They can see these other three are in the to-do list, right? It gives them the ability to see that information without calling the developer, right? Without Teams message, email, whatever that poll, and waiting for that, because this is a real-time view. So when I go into Jira, which is the system we're using for our bug tracking, and I update this bug to say it's fixed, and I put a release time on, release number on there, the salespeople will know that immediately because this will refresh. This is kind of a refreshable view that sits within there, and it gets that communication. It gives that ability to the people when they need it. They don't have to wait. Like, hey, Mark's giving a webinar right now, and he can't answer the question, but the customer's on the phone wanting to know the situation and what's happening. They can see it right here. So you start putting that information and that power into that person's hands. We can do the same thing with the development, right? We can do that same thing with the project. You can see those meeting notes in here. Gives them that ability to be able to truly see that, right? This is that query building tool that I talked about that lives inside of PopDoc. Gives me the ability to kind of join these, right? I've got the sales invoice line. I need to join it to the item ledger entry, right? Based on the item number. I need to filter on the line quantity, right? Where it's greater than 0. I can build these queries and get this information out of PopDoc, right? So this is showing me sales lines for serialized items. Now, how do you go through and build that, right? This is a click and drag. This is a click, right? So this is just a click and drag the sales invoice line, the item ledger out there, showing how it's joined. And then you just go through on the right-hand side and you click the fields you want. It gives you that power to start building those Business Central queries to truly understand what it is that you want to do. Finally, we talk a little bit about that Smart Connect documentation, right? I said this was something that I needed to do. So within Smart Connect, right, I go to my documentation, I give it a description, and then I can come in and select which integrations, which thing that I'm going to do. Now, along with all of this, right, I talk a little bit about just this auto documentation, okay? But realistically, what you can help do with a lot of these tools is it's going to limit your interruptions, which is going to cause better code, which is going to cause your projects to be done sooner. It does that communication of the current status almost in a real-time method, right? It gives you that real-time communication without the interruptions, right? The salespeople sit and live in one spot. The support people live in one spot. They can see that information. The other side of that is now that we have that link into that customer, as soon as that bug is done and released, we can also communicate directly to the customer. I know I'm skipping to number 5 here, but you can actually send that communication to the customer that says, hey, you were waiting on bug 1, 2, 3, 4. It's fixed, refresh, and you're done. Or it's fixed and it'll be in build 1, 2, 3, 5, right? Whatever that process is, it gives you that ability. The status calls and the note taking, like I talked about, I automatically take those status calls and the note taking, right? Because if you get in or you're in a status call, you're trying to take notes, but somebody says something else, you're still trying to take the note from the first thing and your mind is on that one, chances are you've missed something. So by using that automated note taking, that AI that is now available to everybody, it gives me that ability. I also send that to customers, which is back to that communicate to customers. It gives them this is the status call, right? This is a recap of what we did. I'm still waiting on Bob from IT to give us access. The documentation, I showed you a little bit about that. But by taking that list of bugs, I can then start doing this and putting those into that release notes, right? This is what was fixed in this particular version. And I can start automating some of these things by automatically pulling them out of the bug tracking system, automatically pulling them out of my project tracking system, and being able to pull all of those things together into one list and gives me the start to that documentation, gives me the start to that release notes, right? That documentation tool that says, here's all of the integrations that I just built for you with everything that has the criteria, it has the mappings, it has the calculations, it has everything that you need. It helps automate a lot of these things for you, okay? Kind of a quick overview, but I just wanted to really talk about development and how do we resolve it and how do we make it better. Are there any questions at all? You can either you can drop them in. There's a little question area within here. Otherwise, we do have a couple of upcoming webinars, right? Powerful dimension reporting, which run into all the time from that perspective and how you can do it. And then simply integrating the 365 on premise. So we've got a couple things within there as well. So again, just to kind of reiterate, communication, less interruptions, get the information to the users where they need it. That's the important part. I know it was kind of a quick one, but I told you I'd try and keep you in that half hour. So I was trying to get you there and leave you a little bit of time for questions as well. Hearing no questions, seeing no questions. My name again, Mark Anderson, mark.anderson at E1 Solutions. If you have any questions or follow-ups, email is absolutely the best way to find me. I appreciate your time today. I hope you've gotten a couple of thoughts just to be able to help you understand as a developer, I want to be able to put on my headphones and just code. Thanks so much. Have a great day.